This is the Husqvarna PG820. It is a dual drive planetary unit. It's a 32-inch planetary unit. Your large motor here controls your satellites. The smaller motor here controls the planetary drum. This is your control panel here with all your dials. When the grinder is plugged in, in order for power to be engaged on the grinder, what I do is I hit the green power button. I don't have it plugged in right now, but there may be a 1-second delay, but then you should see a green light lit up here if you have power. This is your stop and your run button here. This controls the planetary drum and the satellites to have those running or to have them stopped. And then these are your dials for the planetary drum and the satellite. The satellite here, as you can see, is orange. It is highlighted, so this controls your satellites. This controls the planetary drum here. When you are ready to begin grinding, just make sure that your emergency stop is disengaged. And then I would turn this to the run position, and that would begin to turn both the satellites and the planetary drum. Right now, since my dials are pointed the same direction, my planetary drum and satellites are turning in the same direction. If I wanted to run them in counter rotation, I could run the satellites in reverse and I could run the planetary drum in forward, or I could switch them and have the satellites running in forward and the planetary drum running in reverse. Most of the time while we were down at Husqvarna, we ran everything in the same direction. Keep in mind, if you do run these in same direction, that the direction that the dials are pointed is the side that the grinder will cut the hardest on. It was suggested that if you are running along walls, that your dials are pointed towards the wall. Concrete has a tendency to curl towards the wall, so I want it to cut hardest on the side that the wall is on to level out the concrete. So if my walls were on the left-hand side, I would turn these dials and point them towards the left-hand side. If for whatever reason I would need to stop the grinder, it is suggested that you always use this dial to stop the grinder. Do not use the emergency stop. What could happen is if the grinder is running and I go to stop it and I hit my emergency stop, a lot of times people will forget that the grinder is still left in the run position. They'll hit the power button to start the grinder back up, and if it is in run, after about a 2-second delay, it will begin to the grinder will begin to rotate or begin to grind again, and so that sometimes will catch people off guard. So just make sure that you stop the grinder here, not using the emergency stop unless you absolutely have to. This is your reset button here, so if you don't have power, if for whatever reason you don't have power, the reset button, try hitting the reset button and then hitting your power button again to get the power that you need. These are your speeds for both the planetary drum and the satellites. To adjust the speeds one way or the other. When we were down at Husqvarna for the training, we ran everything on the same speed. So we ran the planetary drum and the satellites on the same speed. Metal bond diamonds around a 7, but since you've done quite a bit of grinding, you know what's too fast and what's too slow. If it's a softer concrete, they suggest running it at a higher speed. And you had said that some of the concrete is softer, so a higher speed is recommended for that. Again, going back to the dials should be pointed towards the concrete that still that has not been grinded yet. So as you are doing your grinding, make sure the dials are pointed towards the concrete which still needs to be grinded. Since the grinder in same direction cuts hard on the side that the dials are pointed, what is suggested as you make your long passes, if I go down in this direction, and make a U-turn and come back, if I leave these dials pointed the same way the whole time, what's going to happen is I'm going to cut the concrete will be cut hard on the same side twice, leaving a groove in the floor. So if I go down in this direction, as I turn to come back, I need to make sure I change both of these dials. In order to do that, you don't need to stop the grinder. The grinder doesn't need to be stopped to do that. The motors will slow down the amps, it'll stop the motor, and then it will reverse the direction that they are rotating. So again, you want to make sure that the dials are pointed toward the concrete that still needs to be grinded, and then make sure that you change your dials as you go down and come back. When I go to set the grinder down, you do have a step bar here. This is your step bar. This will come down, and it will allow you to easily, with ease, set the grinder down onto the floor, and then I just simply release my foot and it goes back up to the position that it needs to be. There is a handle here on this side which will adjust the height of the grinder. I simply push that up, and then I can adjust where I'm comfortable with having the handle when I begin to grind. What was suggested is you've got some Allen, if you have Allen wrenches here, this will loosen this and allow you to adjust your handle. The handle height should be right about where your hips are. Therefore, you're controlling the grinder with your hips. You're not trying to control the grinder with your arms. Basically, it's just going to help out body fatigue. Up here, what we have is you've got your plug here. This is where you would plug the grinder in. It's a very unique plug, so it's pretty easy to tell which plug goes on the grinder, which goes into the vacuum. We have put the dust shroud for the grinder inside the electrical box, which is right here. You've got your key here on the side to release both of the locking mechanisms here. That will open up the door, and inside you will find the dust shroud. That's it.